Did you ever wonder if things had worked out differently for you in the past, how life will be different right now? Like, should I have married my high school sweetheart? Should I have chosen better friends when I was in high school? Should I have played more team sports? Well, the reflective question that I ask myself all the time has always been about my own education. You see, I was a terrible student when I was younger. Like most kids in middle school, I got caught up trying to be cool and hang out with the popular kids. And in high school, things got worse. Looking back, I can't remember the names of any of my teachers or anything that I learned in high school. Well, I do remember two things that I learned in high school. That's how to drink beer and play basketball. You see, I was a mess. I was so unfocused that I had to drop out of high school and had to take a test to earn an equivalency diploma. But then, at the urging of my mom, who approached me with a college application in one hand and a baseball bat in the other hand, she forced me to go to college. And when I took my entrance exams and I saw my first year schedule, all of my classes were remedial classes. The feeling that I got at that very moment was that I was a total failure. Now, I know I wasn't stupid, and I wasn't the best student, but I do know that education is a two-way stream. The student has to give a little, and the school has to give a little. So what if it was the school that failed me? No. What if it was the teaching methods that had me feeling like a total and complete failure? Well, I'm happy to report that failure so many years ago, well, he graduated from college. And he continued his education, and he earned a doctorate degree. And guess what? In education. Now, being on the other side, I think to myself, what could have made my journey smoother and with less heartache? And I found the answer to that question on my very first ever day teaching. You see, I was an adjunct professor at a local college in 2008. I was teaching a 6 p.m. marketing class. And like most teachers, I came in, started getting everything organized in my classroom, and while I was doing that, I noticed out of the corner of my eye a student staring at me from the door. And before I could do or say anything, he started walking toward me with a very determined look on his face. And he stopped right there. And he said, "Hey, are you going to bore us to death? Because the last person bored us, and he's not here anymore, so you better do a good job." And before I could say anything else, all I remember seeing was the back of his head as he walked out of my classroom. Well, after 60 minutes of high anxiety, I reluctantly started my class at 6 p.m. And when I took my attendance, all of my students were present, except one, Peter. Well, I started my class at 6, and about 30 minutes into my lecture, Peter, the student from earlier, he walks into my class and sits in the back seat and just folds his arms and just starts staring at everything that I'm doing. What was he looking for? And then I remember, our one-sided conversation from earlier. I think Peter was looking for someone who wasn't going to PowerPoint him to death or put him into a semester-long coma. So in a panic, I started making my class more interesting. I started asking rhetorical questions. I started moving around the classroom. I had the students move around the classrooms. In other words, I stopped explaining and started engaging. And Peter eventually unfolded his arms and looked a little bit more relaxed. And before he left my classroom, he looked at me and he said, "Hey, I learned something today. Good job." That was the moment that I realized that teaching needs to be more dynamic. And everything I thought I knew about teaching was wrong. That evening, Peter taught me that there's a better way to teach students. But more importantly, I learned that I wasn't a failure. I was just bored by teaching methods that didn't interest me. You see, teachers tend to think and teach the way they were taught. And, it doesn't really work that way. So if you think about education and you think about what was happening with Peter, certain things have to stay consistent in a classroom. And our schools today have to compete for the minds of students and the attention of students. Think about it. We have to compete with platforms like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and 100 other social media and gamified platforms. And here we are, all we're doing is teaching the order of operation and the life cycle of a caterpillar. These platforms are designed to drive dopamine levels up, and they're considered exciting, where these over here, us teachers, we're just designed to give information and we're looked at as just plain boring. And these students today, they are influenced by something that we've never seen before in the history of the world. And that's the social media gamified world that we live in. So how do we compete? Well, there are three things that I would recommend that you do in every single classroom: constant activity, constant progress, and constant change. And let's talk about these for a second. The first one is constant activity. Do you know the brain is always looking for activity? You can never not be doing something. Here, do something with me. Let's try to not think for 3 seconds. Ready, set, go. Did your brain turn off? Of course not. Because the brain is always looking for activity. Therefore, all the classroom needs to have constant activity to keep the students engaged, or you're going to lose them. Now, the second ingredient, have you noticed that young people are always asking a variation of these two questions? Why are we doing this? Where are we going with this? What are we going to do next? It's because they're programmed to think about what's next. They've been conditioned in this gamified structure that they live in with everything they do. So classrooms today need to have a roadmap so students feel validated, they know where they're going, and they feel value in what they're learning. And the last ingredient has to do with the changing attention span. Dr. Gloria Mack at the University of California, Irvine did a study, and she found that attention spans have gone from 2.5 minutes all the way down to 47 seconds in the last 13 or so years. So you have to have a constantly changing environment in your classroom, or your students are going to drift, and they're not going to listen to anything that you're saying if you're a teacher. So we have to use this mixture in the classroom in order to keep students engaged. But I would add one more ingredient to this dynamic mixture, and that's AI. Think about it. A well-planned out and thought out prompt mixing these three ingredients of constant activity, constant progress, and constant change, mixed in with lesson plans and classroom activities, can rival this social media phenomenon that we're seeing these days. Listen, in order to combat a powerful technology, you need the newest, most powerful technology, right? So in order to compete, you have to use this mixture. You have to keep the students engaged. Now, in the beginning, I asked you about your life circumstances, how they could have changed. My life circumstances caused me to create a dynamic system of teaching that can rival this social media phenomenon that we're living with. I took a group of students from the 40th percentile all the way to the 80th percentile in 1 year using this mixture. So it works. But what can you do to affect change in education? You may not be an educator, but you're an influencer, every single one of you. So when you come in contact with an educator, I want you to do two simple things. Number one, ask them to consider using this dynamic mixture and infuse it into their classroom. And number two, ask them to consider learning from their students the same way I learned from Peter. Because it wasn't the school that failed me, it was the teaching methods that didn't interest a student like me. So use these two ingredients and the beginning of elevating our education system can start with you. Go ahead.